So I'm kind of a private guy. I'm not the one to reveal too much about myself. But today you'll get to know a little bit more about me. It's not a Q&A or a face reveal, but for those who care, I'm going to talk about my NASCAR fandom over the years, how I got into the sport, the drivers I root for, and much more. So let me stop wasting time and dive into it. Before I got into NASCAR, something I was receiving at a very young age was toy cars. And when I say toy cars, I mean specifically Hot Wheel cars. My parents knew I loved them, so they kept buying me Hot Wheel cars every birthday and Christmas, along with racetracks and other vehicles. My love for cars was established at a very young age. Eventually, I discovered console gaming at an early age as well. I played many games like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, and Twisted Metal, just to name a few. But the game I got absolutely hooked on was NASCAR 2001. I didn't even know NASCAR was a real thing at the time, I just found the game really cool. The colorful cars caught my attention, and something that we all enjoyed doing when we were younger was crashing cars. I didn't take the racing seriously at all. I'm like 4 or 5 years old playing this game, so that's to be expected. NASCAR 2001 came out in November of 2000. I didn't start watching NASCAR until the year 2001. When I discovered NASCAR was a real thing, I was absolutely blown away. I always claimed the first race I watched was either Daytona or Talladega because I got a little bit of memory of me sitting in front of my parents' bed seeing a bunch of colorful fast race cars flash by in a large group lap after lap. The main cars that stood out to me in that memory was of course Jeff Gordon DuPont Flame Scheme, Bobby Hamilton's blue and yellow Square D Scheme, and Steve Park car. I don't know if it was the 2001 Daytona 500 or one of the Talladega races, but I remember them racing in the daytime and those were the cars that stood out to me. If it was the 2001 Daytona 500, that's a messed up first race to watch knowing what took place in that race, but luckily I have no memory of that unfortunate deal. I just know one of my first memories of watching a NASCAR race was watching cars packed up at a super speedway. Now one thing about me during the first couple of years of watching NASCAR was that I never stuck around for the whole race. I'll tune in for like the first 30 minutes and then I'll go do something else. I was a kid, I couldn't sit still for 3+ hours. Sometimes I'll come back for the finish, but for the most part, around that time period, I didn't. It wasn't until around 2004 where I'll actually sit my ass down and watch the entire race. I also started tuning in to practice and qualifying sessions and just became a hardcore fan of the sport. I do have some family members that are NASCAR fans. My dad's been watching since the 70s and he only got 2 of his kids hooked on it. I got 6 siblings, 3 sisters and 3 brothers, and besides me, the only other sibling to catch the NASCAR bug was my second oldest brother. We're hardcore NASCAR fans. We play the NASCAR games, we go to the NASCAR races, we rock the NASCAR merch. We just eat, sleep, and breathe NASCAR. My oldest brother was a casual for a little while around the late 90s, but he drifted away from it. Everyone else in the family doesn't really care about it, which is fine because it's cool to have at least 2 family members that understand NASCAR like me. Even though it's cool to have my dad and one of my brothers into NASCAR just like me, I never ran across anyone outside of family that was into NASCAR. Going to school, the guys will always be talking about football and basketball, and honestly, I'm not into those sports like them. I think one of the reasons why I never ran into any NASCAR fans in my area is because I'm from Chicago, and Chicago isn't exactly NASCAR city, so the chances of meeting NASCAR fans in the Chi is pretty low. I got lucky once in 6th grade. It was a new guy in our class and he had a NASCAR hat on. I eventually spoke to him and he knew his stuff. He was a Kevin Harvick fan. Unfortunately, he transferred a quarter into the school year, so that was short-lived. I feel like an outcast. I don't really care about the NBA or NFL. I'm from Chicago and I'm a NASCAR fan. It's another reason why I feel like an outcast, and that reason why? That's right, I'm black. NASCAR throughout most of its existence has been a predominantly white sport. That's just the truth, but I will say within the past decade or so, it's become much more diverse, and I give NASCAR a lot of credit for that. I still haven't met anybody in Chicago that's also black that's into NASCAR, but I have online. In general, I've met quite a few NASCAR fans online, and a few of them have become very good friends of mine. The first couple of years of watching NASCAR was me just watching cars go around the track and trying to make sense of what was happening throughout the race. I didn't know who was behind the wheel of any of these vehicles. My favorite color has always been red since I was a kid, and yeah, it was red cars in the field or had some red in their schemes, but it was one red car out there on the track that stood out to me, and that was Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s Budweiser Chevrolet. I just love how vibrant the red looked, and it was the car I followed. What I didn't realize at the time was that Dale Jr. teammate Michael Waltrip was my older brother's favorite driver. When we played NASCAR games, we for the most part picked our favorite drivers. When we went to Talladega and Daytona, we would do what Dale Jr. and Michael Waltrip did best in real life, and that was team up and dominate. Eventually, I started finding out more about the driver of that bright red car. Dale Earnhardt Jr. just came off cool as hell. One of the first things I noticed about Jr. was that he was the only driver that wore his hat backwards, and I thought that was dope. But something else about Jr. was his personality, and just how relatable he is to me. Jr. is a very laid back dude, he keeps his head down, kinda shy, but when he's rowdy he can be pretty outgoing. This is exactly how I am, I kid you not. This made me even a bigger fan of Jr., and he was my favorite driver all the way to the day he retired. During the early to mid 2010s, I started thinking about how many years Jr. truly had left in his racing career. I remember in interviews from the 2000s he always said he'll probably race into his 50s, but I knew that was becoming unrealistic, especially with all the concussions he was suffering. I didn't really have a plan to root for another driver after Dale Jr., but I was still gonna watch. I'm not one of those fans that quit watching because their favorite driver retired. One driver that really grabbed my attention in the K&N series was Kyle Larson. It's like as he continued to move up the ladder, the more of a fan I was becoming of his. I remember it was a truck race he ran in 2012 and he was by far the star of that race. Larson was 19 at the time and the moves he was making was exciting to watch. And that's the main reason why I'm such a big Kyle Larson fan. He's fun to watch. He's without a doubt the most fun driver to watch in the field, and it's been that way for almost a decade now. I can't believe it's people that wish he stayed suspended from the sport after all the thrilling moments he provided over the years. I knew Larson was going to become my favorite driver once he got the Cup, and I rooted for him and Dale Jr. for a few years. Once Dale Jr. retired, it's been Larson all since then. Around the mid 2010s, NASCAR was going through a lot of change and I was not a fan of most of it. The knockout style playoff format, stage racing, low horsepower, high downforce, it was just a bunch of shit NASCAR was doing that I very much disliked. Of course, when you dislike something, you rant about it a lot, and that's what I would do in party chats on the PlayStation with my friends. I had opinions on a lot of things when it came to NASCAR, so instead of expressing my opinion towards a few friends, why not towards a bigger audience? I've had a YouTube account since 2013 and for the most part, it wasn't something I was really putting time into. I'll upload something funny or weird that happened on the game and will make NASCAR gaming wishlist videos, but for the most part, I didn't put a lot of time into it. But 2020 came and everything shut down and people were stuck at home. With that, you got a lot of time on your hands and I definitely had that. So I started putting a lot of effort into making NASCAR YouTube videos. I remember I was just putting out videos giving my opinion on all types of things like the yellow line rule, competition cautions, my opinion on certain drivers like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Hailie Deegan, and personally I was enjoying putting videos together even though I wasn't getting that many views at the time. But then I started gaining a following and just kept at it with the NASCAR videos. It's something I know that ain't going to present an opportunity for me to break into the sport, but like I said, it's something I personally enjoy doing, and you guys showing support definitely motivate me to keep at it, so I really appreciate that. Yes, my frustration with NASCAR was pretty high at one point, but I just want to let it be known that I love this sport. When I criticize NASCAR, it's just tough love. I want NASCAR to be mainstream again. I grew up when NASCAR was mainstream and it was absolutely incredible. Unfortunately, I seen it fall, and it sucks seeing something at its absolute best and then fall off the face of the earth. Just because I make videos being critical doesn't mean I hate the sport. There's other YouTubers that get labeled as NASCAR haters like Whatifracing and David Land, all because they're showing tough love. We know it can be better. One last thing I want to mention before I go, I didn't go to my first NASCAR race until 2022. Yes, I know it's odd that I've been a NASCAR fan since 2001 and haven't seen my first race until 20 years later. Things just never lined up. Me, my dad, and my second oldest brother wanted to attend Chicagoland since it was only about 40 minutes away from us, but we just didn't. One cool thing I experienced back in 2002 was when NASCAR came to Chicago, they had this whole event outside this grocery store called Jewel's where it was race cars parked outside the store. crew members giving away merchandise, and some activities. I remember my mom took me and my brother to this, and 2 race cars that was out there was Rusty Wallace and Ricky Craven cars. We looked inside the cars and that was cool, but then one of the crew members decided to start one of the cars up, and holy shit, the car was loud as hell. The ground was shaking and it startled 6-year-old me. At the time, I was amazed and never heard a vehicle that loud in my life up to that point. It's crazy that I didn't experience hearing a stock car in person again until 20 years later when I went to Michigan in 2022, seeing these cars fly past me at over 200 miles per hour. So there you have it. That's my NASCAR story. By the way, this is the 3,000 subscribers special video I was telling y'all about, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I can't thank y'all enough for all the support y'all have shown. I really appreciate it. So, you heard my NASCAR story, and now I want to hear from y'all. In the comments, tell me how y'all got into NASCAR. How do you discover drivers you like? How many races have you been to? Don't be afraid to leave long paragraphs. Trust me, I'll be reading all of it. So, I'm gonna go ahead and roll up out of here. Y'all have a good one. Peace.